Hey, welcome to episode 118 of Tuesdays with Perry. Welcome to the podcast tonight. We're going to get Perry on the line in just a minute. We're going to talk about Israel. Is Israel a secular nation? And whether Israel is or isn't a friend of the United States. We're also going to talk about the new nominee for mayor of New York City by the Democratic Party, Zohran Mamdani, a Muslim communist. We're going to talk a little bit about the mainstream media and how they're treating Trump, or as we like to call him now, Big Daddy. So let's see if we can get Perry on the line.
Hello? Rudy, you there?
Hey, Perry, welcome to episode 118 of Tuesdays with Perry. How are you, my friend?
Hot, bothered, but other than that, unafraid.
What's the temperature down there?
It got up to 90, officially it got up to 96 today, but if you were traveling on I-4, it was 100 degrees.
Wow. Yeah, it was about the same temperature up here in the Northeast, believe it or not. So we're both suffering through the heat. There's a lot of other things we have to deal with these days, which is, if you believe it or not, a communist has been elected by the Democrats in New York City to run for mayor. And then we
Not
have
just a communist, but a Muslim. You know, that just goes to show how wonderful this country is.
Well, it just shows how crazy liberals in the big cities can get. So why don't we start out with Zohran Mamdani? He was now New York City has ranked choice voting, which means you get to rank how you like the candidates, and the person that gets ranked the best will be the nominee. So if you believe it or not, more left of Bernie Sanders, more left of AOC. We have this young 33-year-old ne'er-do-well like Bernie Sanders, never had a real job, and now could run the biggest city in America.
Run it into the ground.
We'll see. Yeah.
I mean, if we thought de Blasio was bad, this is the guy that Bill de Blasio is praying will make it to Gracie Mansion, because then his sorry ass will be off the hook for being the worst mayor of New York in 100 years. Even David Dinkins, I don't know if Davey's still alive, but if he isn't, he's looking down from heaven and he's thanking Bill de Blasio for getting him off the hook. And that's exactly what this guy is going to do for Bill de Blasio.
Yeah, yeah. Bill de Blasio wanted city-run pot shops, and apparently Mamdani is going to have city-run, government-run grocery stores. Well, we've thought we saw the end of bread lines. Are they coming to New York City?
Well, I don't know if the lines will be due to lack of food on shelves as much as it will be people looking at this and saying, you expect me to buy this shit?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be in such poor quality. And look, like all communist socialists, he thinks he can do it better than Lenin or Stalin or Mao or Pol Pot or the Castro brothers or Daniel Ortega down in El Salvador. All these people, not El Salvador.
Nicaragua.
No, it wasn't El Salvador. Nicaragua. Thank you for correcting me. all these people always pointed to the ones prior to them and said, no, they had the right idea. It was just the wrong person. And this is exactly what got that kind of thinking, rent control. Most people don't understand rent control doesn't simply mean landlords can't raise rent on people that are already living in one of their domiciles. It also says that even when the city raises the cost of operating that building, meaning taxation, they're still not allowed to adjust the rates to take into consideration the additional money it's costing to own that property by way of property taxes.
Right.
And for people who don't know what New York City, specifically the Bronx, look like, there are parts of the Bronx now, if people were to drive down the Major Deegan, and if you don't know where that is, folks, all you got to do is Google Earth it. There are parts on either side of the Major Deegan, 50 years later, thanks to AD, that still look like a bomb went off on that block. And they're shooting galleries. That's all they are. There's no windows. There's no doors. They're just empty shells of buildings. And the reason for that is landlords could not raise rents commensurate with what it was costing for them to maintain the building. So they threw their hands up and said, okay, you take it. And the city took it. The city got it, but nobody wanted to buy the building because they couldn't make money with it. And then that's why the dilapidation happened. This guy is going to put that program on steroids to the point where people won't even want to live in Trump Tower. And I'm not trying to make mountains out of molehills. That's a fact. This guy wants to eviscerate the police force and go to community policing. He wants to close the jails. You want to talk about absolute chaos. That's it. What was his name? Snake Reynolds in the movie Escape from New York?
Snake, Priskin, Siskin,
I think it was Priskin.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, but I remember his name was Snake, played by Kurt Russell.
Right.
That's what's coming to New York City if this schmuck is voted into office. Now, the question is, why did he get to the top of the ticket? Well, you have to look at it. You got a little crybaby Jew boy who had to get mommy from Albany to get him out of jail. Nobody wanted him.
Who's that? Stringer? Stringer?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you had a removed governor from sitting in the governor's mansion due to what we all know was trumped up charges, no pun intended, but nevertheless got him thrown out of the governor's mansion because of what he had done to elderly residents of New York State during COVID. That was the real reason why Andrew Cuomo got thrown out of office.
Right.
They just used this nonsensical sexual harassment nonsense as a way to get people angry at him so much more that he would ultimately leave office because he did not want to be impeached.
Right.
So you have a removed governor who would have been impeached if he fought. You have a bunch of other ne'er-do-wells right down the line, and you have Adams was smart enough months ago. He saw the tea leaves. He saw the direction his party was going, and said, well, I'm not going to become a Republican because Sliwa's not going to let me get away with it. So I'm just going to run as an independent. And that was probably the smartest move Adams could make. And in all honesty, when it comes down to it, the 82% of all New York City votes, which are Democrat, are going to be divided up amongst at least 2, if not 3 candidates, okay, for the general election, because there's going to be other people that run as independents, in addition to Cuomo and Adams. But Adams is the only real independent. And then you have the dark horse, which is Curtis Sliwa, the Republican, who, I've sent Curtis money for more reasons than just him running for city office. He's the founder of the Guardian Angels. And I remember as a teenager, anytime I was walking down the street in Manhattan or in the Bronx, because I had family at the time that was living in the Bronx, if I saw one of them, I felt safer. They were a citizen patrol then. They are a citizen patrol now. And Curtis is a law and order kind of guy. And so he actually has a shot at this because the liberal vote, the socialist and communist vote is going to be split. And you have 18 to 19%, basically Staten Island, of the New York City electorate that is solidly behind Curtis. So depending how things go, my assumption is it's either going to be Adams for a second term, which is not the end of the world.
Right.
Or Sliwa slides in because all the Democrats split their vote 3-4 different ways.
Yeah.
Could
very well be. Is Sliwa the only Republican candidate? Have they had a primary yet, or they just gave him the nod?
No, they anointed him.
Yeah.
They anointed him.
Yeah. So to me, it looks like Eric Adams could skate into a second term here. Because,
I agree.
Because any rational person is not going to want government grocery stores. I mean, this is really the progressives. If you watch my show from this morning, the progressives have gone so far as they often do, going into these extreme policy positions. And they're not even conscious of unintended consequences of their actions. I mean, they propose this stuff. You saw what happened when you defund the police.
Right. And we saw that not in one, not in two, but in more than a half a dozen major cities throughout the country. They were all blue cities, but the point still remains. We see what happens, whether it's in Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles County, Minneapolis, New York, even to a certain extent up in Boston. We see Chicago. We see what these, we have to stop kidding ourselves, Rudy. These people are not stupid. I'm talking about the progressives. They're not stupid. They, as I've said before, they hate this country. They hate its founding. They believe the only way to fix this country is to literally tear it down to basement level and rebuild it in a socialist utopia. And that is part of what they've been doing going all the way back. Like I said, whether or not LBJ intended it for this purpose, the social safety net that he created in the 1960s has absolutely imploded what we call the nuclear family. And the reason being is because the federal government has rules. If there's a mother and father in the family, you have a breadwinner, and therefore you don't need any help. Well, dad is, he has physical ailments, or he has a mental limitations. He can only hold a job as a simple janitor or as a garbage man, and he can't make more than $50,000 a year. Well, how many people with a family of 4 or 5 today can live on $50,000 a year when rent alone in just about any major city or urban center for a 1-bedroom apartment is anywhere between $1,200 and $2,400 a month. So how could a family of 5 not qualify? Well, those are the rules.
Right.
And so these things happen for a reason. And that's why I say they're not stupid. They design their programs to see to it that the nuclear family falls apart for a number of reasons. We don't want to go there tonight. For a number of reasons. And therefore, the government becomes daddy. And now mommy and the kids have to depend on government to take care of them. They have to depend on government to provide them with Section 8 housing. They have to depend on the government to give them free health care that you and I pay for. They have to depend on the government to give them, they don't even want to give them food stamps anymore because that's too humiliating. So now they get EBT cards so that they can go in and buy whatever food they want, including Dr. Pepper, on our dime. They do all these things as long as they play by the rule that Daddy in Washington, D.C. set. And so this is all part and parcel. This is the master plan, and it has worked almost flawlessly with only a couple of interruptions. Those couple of interruptions in my lifetime being Ronaldus Magnus and Donaldus Magnus.
Right.
And my biggest fear about Trump's second term is who is going to take the mantle when he has to step down in 3.5 years. Because the forces of evil, whether they are here domestically or they are outside our borders from foreign powers, are doing the exact same thing. Okay, we can only push this far. The Ayatollah found that out last week. We can only go this far, but all we got to do is wait him out. He only has 3.5 years left.
Yeah, that's what I said. I was talking. I was actually commenting on a couple chat pages today. People are all enthralled with what Trump is doing, but the New World Order keeps moving the agenda along. They keep moving the ball down the field. It's baby steps. It's baby steps. It's incrementalism. We think we're winning, and as long as you have Jerome Powell in there and people trying to thwart this big, beautiful bill, we're not making the progress we need to make, and certainly not undoing the New World Order agenda, which is moving steadily ahead, and especially with going after Iran. And I don't want to digress too much on that point. I want to go to another Muslim, because I think you were referring to this when you said, when is a foreigner able to even go through the process of buying a gun legally in this country, which is a good point. And I think you're talking about Mohammed Soliman, who was the anti-Semitic attacker in Colorado who actually lit himself on fire. My only hope is if he did get his hands on a gun, he would shoot himself before he shot anybody else.
But the question remains, for any law-abiding citizen in this country to be able to legally obtain a firearm, you have to go through a gauntlet of paperwork. Even here in the free state of Florida, we can't get away from federal background checks. Now, I'm not opposed to background checks, but my question is, how is it a foreign national who is here? I don't know if had he already overstayed his visa? I don't remember that.
Yes.
All I know is
yes, in 2024. Okay. So right around the election, his visa expired.
Okay. So you have a foreign national who is officially here illegally. And he has the gumption, even though he knows he's here illegally, to go in to a gun store or a store that sells guns and apply to be able to legally purchase a handgun. Now, I'm sorry, but the moment he did that, he violated the terms of his visa. He should already be back home in Syria or whatever country he came from.
Egypt. Yep.
He shouldn't even be here anymore.
Right. Not only that,
he violated the terms of his visa. End of story.
And his family was here too.
Right. Well, look, their visas expire at a certain point too. They were here on a tourist visa.
Yeah.
Okay. You saw Dismal World. You went and saw Shamu. You went and waved at Harry Potter. Now get the fuck out.
Yeah.
You're here too long. When you talked about that, I went apoplectic. I just could not wrap my mind around the fact that we have people in government, whether state government or not, that are the first people to touch that paperwork, and they don't see anything wrong with that. Well, hell, we got a city councilwoman in L.A. County over the weekend is demanding that all these Latin gangs come out and show their faces.
The cholos. Get the cholos out there and fight ICE.
Go fight ICE. I mean, first of all, how she got her PhD and what her PhD is in, I don't know. But as I've said about other liberals who have heard, like Jill Biden, find out what school they attended and make sure your children don't go there.
Yeah.
Because obviously, not only was that an education that the individual never received, but more importantly, everybody else in that ivory tower may be wasting their money as well.
Yeah. When I went to school, they used to call it social studies. I think they call it socialist studies now.
Yeah.
So
I do think so.
Yeah. So I don't know, because everybody was apoplectic as you were, that why wasn't this Egyptian national immediately apprehended and deported when he applied to get a gun permit or to apply through the background check? Because something came up other than his expired visa. Something came up in his background that didn't allow him to buy a gun. Apparently, the FBI found something else out about him that was even more nefarious than him just being here illegally. So I happen to agree with you. If an American citizen has to go through the rigmarole just to get a firearm, which he's guaranteed under the Constitution, the Second Amendment, foreign nationals certainly should have to have a long waiter period or not even be able to obtain one at all, certainly. Correct. All right, so let's get into the meat of the matter today, which is Israel. You had several statements you sent me here. I'm just going to read them aloud. So the first one is Israel is not a secular nation, and we'll get to all these. Israel did not violate the truce or the ceasefire first. And Israel is a friend of the U.S. for several reasons other than the obvious. Why don't we start with the latter? Israel is a friend of the USA for several reasons and I think you took umbrance with several statements I made, so you could just lay into me as you will.
Okay. Let's start with the last, as you said.
Israel is a friend of the U.S. for several reasons.
Number
one,
it is the only democracy in the Middle East. Number one, it is a country that welcomes all Americans, not just Jews, all Americans. It is, because it's a democracy, it is a country, because of its Western alliances, and I don't mean military, I'm talking about social alliances, with Europe, with the United States, up until the African National Congress took over South Africa. They even had commercial dealings and an open relationship with South Africa. So number one, it's a friendly democracy that sees the United States as a big brother and one that has always walked side by side with the United States. Having said that, every country always does what is in its own best interest. And, you know, the first thing that comes to mind is Jonathan Pollard. To this day, I still don't know what Jonathan Pollard stole and handed to the Israelis. This had to do with state secrets. It had to do with some kind of tech. What he handed, eavesdropping tech or whatever, he handed to the Israelis that really set, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, GW was in office at the time. It really set relations back many footsteps. So therefore, you have to look at everything Israel does, as you would expect our leaders, and most importantly, whoever holds the office of president, to do on behalf of we Americans. Now, I don't ever apologize for the fact that I am a proud American who also happens to be a proud Jew. But my allegiance belongs to my country first, the United States of America, and to Israel second, a distant second. Most, if not virtually all Jews, see it the same way. That doesn't apply to AIPAC, but that's a whole nother ball of wax. So when I tell you and your audience, Israel is a friend of ours, there's a lot of things Israel has done over the years, over the decades, that have benefited the United States. And I'm talking about things they have done surreptitiously. We have gained incredible intelligence for our benefit through the Israelis. Now, you might argue, Rudy, well, can we trust that intelligence? I would tell you that if we benefited from it because our government says so, then we benefited from it. End of story.
Right.
There are dark things that have happened in the history of our two countries. For example, the USS Liberty, which happened in 1967. I heard the whole story recited by one of the surviving sailors who gave a very long interview to the hosts of Redacted. And I wouldn't call him an anti-Semite, but he said anti-Semitic things. Well, I looked at it from a standpoint, what if I were on that ship at the time that Israelis who were circling the ship in warplanes that were painted black with no markings on them, kept taking pot shots at my ship when we had Old Glory flying at the top mast? Well, you hear the whole story from this gentleman, you'll understand that two people made that decision from the United States. Lyndon Baines Johnson and his Secretary of Defense, McNamara. And when you hear that, it breaks my heart as an American to know that Israeli F-4 Phantom pilots were given orders to sink an American ship. And it was all done on purpose to be another Gulf of Tonkin incident, so that the United States could actually enter the Six-Day War and finish off what was left of Sadat's army in Egypt. And it didn't happen. Well, Israel has taken it on the chin for 50 years now, 60 years now, for being the bad guy who tried to sink an American ship. They were the ones who were told to do it by our own president. So when I tell you Israel is a friend on multiple levels, even at risk of damaging their own relations with the people, not the government, the people of our country. And the other problem I have with Israel, with the exception of Bibi Netanyahu, there has never been an Israeli prime minister that has worked so hard to build up his country's economy so that he would no longer have to depend on aid from the United States of America. Now, he's not there. They're still getting between $6 and $8 billion a year, and that's when they're in the war. And so sooner, if it ever happens, sooner, whether it be, hopefully, if he steps down after he pushes out this term, if he steps down, he's not a young man anymore. Who places him in the Likud party, if they hope to win a future election, they will continue to carry the ball to the point where the Israeli economy can produce enough GNP that they don't have to, Uncle Sam, give the aid so that they buy our planes, our missiles. They don't bother taken by the German tank. So, and the other thing is, with Trump, God willing, if there can be a second half of the Abraham Accord, if the Crown Prince of Iran actually can make Tehran to guide his people into the democracy they've always wanted, well, imagine how powerful those two economies, Israel and Iran, are going to be. Because most people don't know this, but during the years of the Shah, those two countries were very friendly with each other. They had trade. I don't know if they had embassies in each country. They probably did. They did a lot of trade, and they were considered friendly nations upon one another. And so that is what could be if things fall into place after what has transpired in the past 2 weeks. So these are the reasons why I say Israel is a friend of the United States.
Okay. No, I
granted.
Yeah, go ahead.
Granted, it is a junior partner. And just like you, I don't want to continue to have to give foreign aid to that country.
Right. I
want it to stand on its own 2 feet.
Right. So we get shared intelligence, which is certainly a plus, is admirable, especially having an ally in the Middle East where there's natural resources where we need stability there. So having a democratic ally there certainly is important. I wouldn't say that it isn't. I think it is. Is it worth $6 or $8 billion a year? Let's say for somebody, and not me, I'm just thinking outside the box here, American citizen who isn't Jewish, that doesn't care about the Middle East, is it worth is the intelligence worth $6 or $8 billion a year?
Well, it's not just the intelligence, it's also the high tech. There's a lot of things that are now being put into our military. One of the things that's coming our way now is, believe it or not, the Golden Dome is going to be based on that technology. It's being shared by Israel. So, and there are other high tech things that, unfortunately, off of my mind, I don't recall. But there have been a lot of things that the Israelis have given. It's not that we buy it; they've given it to us.
Right.
So, it's not a one-way street. It's just that, unfortunately, one side of the street goes 60 miles an hour. The other side of the street does 30.
Yeah.
But, you made the point. Well, what about somebody who's not Jewish? Well, let's look at me. I'm one of your friends. I am Jewish. And I'm telling you, as an American who happens to be Jewish, I don't want to have to continue to give Israel money. Their economy continues to flourish. It is growing. But the problem is they had to fight in this war.
Yeah.
And now that we have the Ayatollah on their heels, this is the first opportunity in the last 45 years for there to be a true lasting peace in the region. Because the Ayatollahs are not just a threat to the United States or to Israel. They're a threat to Saudi Arabia. They are a threat to Bahrain.
Yeah.
They are a threat to Kuwait.
And oil trade, sure, out of the Persian Gulf. Yeah.
Right. So imagine if there could be the possibility of a true democracy. And, I've listened to 3 speeches that the Crown Prince has given, and I think he's being very coy. But in each speech given, he's given 2 interviews. I've seen one of the interviews. He has said repeatedly, the crown. Those are his exact words. I do not want the crown. I want freedom and liberty for my people. I want them to be able to determine their own form of self-governance. They have never had that, not even under my father. And if there's anything I want my people to have, is a free, democratic country.
Right.
And he said,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was being devil's advocate there, because there's some concern among conservatives with MAGA, America First, and other isolations about giving Israel money. But I understand the foreign diplomacy of it all, and I understand the importance of a Jewish state, which brings me I'm going to hop up to the first question posed before we get into the war. And Israel was the first to the ceasefire or not. But I'm going to get into this issue of whether Israel is or isn't a secular nation.
Right. Is not a secular nation. And it's interesting because I always thought it was too. But my Israeli friend corrected me. He said, "You're confusing democracy. But in order for me to get divorced from now ex-wife, I had first go to the rabbinical court, who has jurisdiction over every marriage throughout the country. If you are tried by a judge and jury, but ultimately it is based solely on biblical law. So, for example, if you were to lay down with another man's wife, adultery is no longer just piss, like it is in this country. It's not a civil matter. It is a judicial matter of criminality. So that's why I was corrected this past weekend by my buddy. He said, "Do not confuse the two. Secularism is the absence of religion, whereas a democratic religious state has many, if not all, liberties of a secular nation, but is all founded on strict adherence to the Jewish Testament."
Right.
And he said, perfect example is, what is the first day of the week? And I said, well, I recently, meaning in the last 10 years, came to understand that it's actually Sunday. He said, that's correct. Why is that? I said,
the Sabbath.
Shabbat ends on Saturday night. Do you think Christians complain about that? No. Do you think the Muslim who are, had this conversation before, and you know this back anyway, Muslims that live within the boundaries of Israel, do you think they make a big stink about that when their Sabbath is on a Friday? No. But officially, because under Jewish law, civil law, the week starts on Sunday and continues until 2 hours before sunset on Friday.
Friday, yeah.
And that's the reason why a lot of stores close in the afternoon, because they're strictly adherent Jewish people.
Yeah.
So, you know,
my condition was, because I see what you're saying here, and it's made a lot of sense. But even the same fact is that, United States, a lot of the law based on Christian law or book law, as you say, a lot of people were saying it was secular only because it wasn't ruled by religious edict, let's say in a theocracy, where the religious practice and the religious rules of Judaism is put over people that aren't Jewish.
Right.
And so it's not a theocracy. So if people say it's not a theocracy, then they just assume that it's a secular state if it's not a monarchy. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I think it's a loose understanding. Israel,
for so many reasons, is a very unique country. For so many reasons. And one of them is that's coming from an Israeli citizen, not from me. It is a country founded in religion, I don't want to say theocratic, but in religious law. But like you just stated, if you're Jewish, that part of Jewish law, which is with very few exceptions, it applies to Jewish citizens and mine gave the perfect example with regard to divorce. First, go before the rabbinical court in order to get approved for divorce religiously before the state even hear. And oh, by the way, whatever the rabbi, I think he said it was a 3-rabbi court. Whatever the rabbis decided, the government of Israel abided by. So that's why I say it is not a secular nation,
right?
In most regards,
right? Because the government relies on rabbinical law in a variety of different civil situations. Yeah, or maybe, you might know better than I do. Maybe even in some criminal situations. So,
definitely,
yeah. So that's interesting. So that has to be considered when you're talking about Socialism and Israel. Definitely interesting. We have it even more close now than just, I mean, it's secular because it's not a theocracy. All right, let's move on to let's start. We said Israel did not violate the ceasefire first. We got the missile that, according to Trump, didn't land anywhere. It was one missile. And heard Trump's argument. So what's your response to Donaldus Magnus?
The response, first of all, as is almost always the case, he's right. But Israel's final attack, which he got really pissed off about, wasn't about that final missile. It seemed to fit in his end. The missile that barrage, it was a missile barrage just before this one missile that he's talking
right before the missile took even to effect. Yeah, Iran launched the barrage of missiles at Israel, and Israel retaliated full-heartedly on Iran.
Right.
Yep.
Right, and it was because of that attack. One specific, a high tower apartment building in Sky building. Now, something else I learned this weekend with regards to, every single building since 1988. I'm not sure about the exact date, but it was in the 1980s. From Lebanon and from the Gaza Strip.
Yep.
And the reason why they changed the building codes was not because the buildings couldn't withstand, because they're not big explosions. They can be deadly because strikes, it's 6 people on the street, it's going to kill every one of those people.
Yeah.
Probably when they did hit buildings, if people could get into the bomb shelter that was either in a basement or it was on property somewhere outside the print of the building, people died. There were a lot of deaths. And so they decided, okay, I don't want any part of condominium that is erected. There has to be in every apartment, there has to be a safe room that can withstand a direct hit from a rocket. And is part and parcel of why so few Israelis died in this 12-day war. Because on the fusions, during every barrage, there were 1 to maybe 3 rockets that hit their mark.
Missiles. Missiles.
Sorry, missiles.
Yeah, we went.
For correcting
we went into a big diatribe, me and my wife, recently, and I've seen on the news quite lately too. Is the difference between a missile and a rocket? Is a rocket is unguided, missiles are guided, and missiles are usually larger loads, et cetera, et cetera. So,
they're far accurate and far more deadly. There is a big difference.
Yep.
So thank you for correcting. So the problem with this rocket that made a direct hit on a Israeli apartment was that we know it was deliberately targeted, and Israel know it's done on purpose, propaganda reasons, and pretty good job of explaining. A couple of school kids in a schoolyard beating each other up, and quite frankly, I'm sick of it. The fact of the matter was, no. You deliberately targeted innocent people. We're going to beat you up that much more. But we're going to take out military personnel. We're going to take out military buildings. We're going to do more